Welcome to News Lottery Interviews. I'm Alpana Kishore, and today I'm talking to Rahul Pandita, who is the author of Our Moon Has Blood Clots. Rahul is a Kashmiri Pandit who has written his story. Perhaps for the first time something like this has come out, the story of the Kashmiri Pandit.
I guess so.
In the public domain.
Yeah.
Because usually we hear about the Muslim narrative. Did you feel there's a need for bringing out your story because it is completely overshadowed by the other narrative?
I think this is the first book I've ever wanted to write ever since I was in college, and I'm talking about 93, 96. And we were a couple of years into exile. I think it's one of the primary reasons I chose to become a journalist and a writer. But the book has been a very extremely difficult book to write because of the personal history involved. I started writing it seriously from 2000 onwards, but I found a few passages very difficult to write. So I gave up. In between, because of my other work as a full-time journalist, I've been traveling through the length and breadth of what we now know as the Red Corridor. In the middle of this last decade, things started to hotten up there, and a couple of books came up. For which I'm thankful, because that also gave me a break from what has been going on in my mind all these years. I was also not very clear about the way I should tell this story. There were times when I wanted to fictionalize it, etc., but it's only because after I met my editor, Meru Gokhale, so we came to the conclusion that this should come as a memoir. And looking at it now, I'm glad it has come the way it has.
To go back to the question, do you think there was a need for you to tell this? Not just personally, as somebody who's gone through a conflict and needs like a catharsis to, bring out his own personal suffering, or, whatever it is, the baggage you carry in a conflict, being part of a conflict. But also because, like I said, the narrative is so completely dominated by the Kashmiri Muslim perspective. And this is the first time really that a Pandit, there have been fictionalized books before, yeah. But this is the story of somebody growing up in that conflict, actually being a refugee, coming out of it. And, it's one of the few books, let's put it that way, that bring out another perspective.
I think I've really been angry about the way media and the whole liberal discourse of this country has ignored the Kashmiri Pandit story in all these years.
Why do you think that's so? I mean, why did you think that they ignored it?
The way things work in this country is that if you're talking about Adivasis in Bastar, or you're talking about brutalization of the Indian state in Kashmir or Northeast, which are very valid questions anyway. It's fashionable to talk about these things in certain ways. So as long as you are talking about these things, you're left of center, and there's nothing wrong with your narrative, you're dubbed a hero. But the moment you begin to talk about something, what happened to the Kashmiri Pandit community or other such questions, there's this tendency of you being immediately dubbed as a Narendra Modi supporter. So I wanted to debunk that myth. The advantage with me is that they can't put me in this slot because of my work with the Maoists and my public stand, which is also my private stand, which is that unfortunate things have happened in Kashmir in 1989-90, which led to the exodus of 3.5 lakh Kashmiri Pandits. About 650 to 700 of them were brutally killed, raped, etc. Not only by the Islamist militants, but the majority community of Kashmir took an active part in 1989-90. But we need to move on. It's very important that we move on. But that moving on, that reconciliation, if I put it that way, won't be possible till there's a consensus on the circumstances that led to our exodus. I think for me personally, as a Kashmiri Pandit, the bigger betrayal than what we faced in 1989-90 has been the untruth really spoken in these last few years about the circumstances that led to exodus. And I found myself to be, I was less angry about it when I was 20 than I am now. There's a character in a Naipaul's novel called In a Free State, The Tramp, who is fascinated with numbers, etc. So I think in the last few years I've been really fascinated by the numbers of, I have made it my life's mission to talk about what happened to us in 1989-90, the number of people who were killed, their names, their localities, etc. I hold it very close to my heart.
Okay. You said that not only were the Kashmiri Pandits targeted by the militants, but also there was this key involvement of the majority community. Now, this is something that's completely glossed over. It's never mentioned, it's not touched upon. And in fact, you only hear stories when you go to Kashmir, as I'm sure you know when you go back to report over there, that, things were okay, things were, it's an unfortunate thing that happened, but relationships were deep, they were strong, and I know that that is true. There were very strong relationships between Kashmiri Muslims and Kashmiri Pandits, but something happened that was bad, but that doesn't mean that the whole community is broken down. But do you think that's actually valid, given that you say the biggest betrayal was that of the Kashmiri Muslim majority community who lived with you as neighbors, as friends, as colleagues? I want you to revisit that.
I think I'll put it this way, on a personal level, we've had a very good relationship, person-to-person relationship. My father, mother, both were government servants. We went to school, my sister went to school. On a personal level, we had relationships. But there's always been bitterness about the presence of Kashmiri Pandits there, especially because, for the majority community in Kashmir, we're always symbols of Indianness there. And I think we paid a price for two things: upholding the Indian flag and upholding our religious freedom.
Okay,
and we paid a heavy price for that in 1989-90.
Yes.
And when I say the complacency and the involvement of the ordinary Kashmiri Muslims, because when 90, a handful of Kashmiri boys who crossed over across the line of control and returned with arms could not have done it without the involvement of the majority community. I stayed in a small suburb in Srinagar, in this locality, in this Hindu neighborhood, comprising of about 15 to 20 Kashmiri Pandit houses, surrounded by Muslim neighborhoods from all sides. Very peaceful. Once in a while there would be communal riots. A temple would be targeted, as you would have read in the book. But overall, a very normal little living. But that all changed on this day, 23 years ago, on the night of 19 January 1990. My locality was surrounded by 3 to 4 mosques, and hundreds of thousands of people on this night assembled in these mosques, and they started shouting slogans against Indian state, against Kashmiri Pandits. And I would specifically like to mention one slogan, which in Kashmiri goes, "Asigas Pannui Pakistan, Battorosti Battensan," which means that we want our Pakistan without Kashmiri Pandit men, but with their women. And I mentioned this in the book.
Right.
The only scene which comes close to what happened on that night is this classic, television serial based on Bhishma Sahani's novel on the partition of India and Pakistan called Tamas.
Something you mentioned there, being targeted for being pro-Indian.
Yeah.
Now, this is a question that sort of, maybe a Kashmiri Pandit doesn't want to hear, but do you think that being a minority in a community that so clearly prefers a particular thing, they want maybe independence, or they want to join Pakistan, or clearly their Muslim identity is the most important to them. Say from 1947 onwards, if you had supported this strand of being anti-Indian, because most Kashmiri Pandits take pride in the fact that they were the only ones pro-Indian in Kashmir. But from the point of view of the Kashmiri Muslim, obviously you're going to stick out like a thorn. Wouldn't it have been just easier and perhaps more supportive to go along with whatever the majority community wanted?
No, I think as Kashmiri Pandits we have very strong ties with India, and we always felt ourselves a part of India. The first Prime Minister.
Now, why is that?
The first Prime Minister of India. I mean, we have ties with India.
No, you have ties, but
yeah.
clearly your ties are closest to Kashmir.
Yeah.
So
no, we have ties closest to Kashmir, and we have ties with India. I mean, the first Prime Minister of India was a Kashmiri Pandit.
True.
And we have seen, as Kashmiri Pandits, what happened to those who opted for Azad Kashmir in 1947. I think it's very practical for us to say, not only as a Kashmiri, but as someone who has reported extensively from Kashmir, and as a proud Indian, that there are certain problems as far as the Kashmir narrative is concerned. There has been brutalization, there have been human rights violations, etc. But I think the best future of Kashmiris still lies with India. And even if we assume for a second that India is going to give up on Kashmir and declare it independent, which is not going to happen in the next 5,000 years. But let's assume for a second that it will happen. Do you think Kashmir, Pakistan will let Kashmir remain independent for even a second?
I'm familiar with the logic of it. I understand the logic and the strategic atmosphere around the geopolitical situation, all that.
So that's why what happened in 1947.
No, my point is
the condition of people who chose Azad Kashmir at that point of time.
Yeah,
they are living a miserable life, and we don't want to live that miserable life. No, we want to be a part of a nation which is secular. At least in letter, if not in spirit, and we want to be a part of this modern nation, and we don't want to be a part of Azad Kashmir.
If you are looking at history, for instance, the history between the Pandits and the Muslims is long and complicated.
Sure.
There has been a great deal of sort of seesawing. Sometimes the Muslims were in power, sometimes the Pandits were more powerful than the Muslims. And the Pandits have enjoyed, at least in the last century before, a pretty decent spell of power with the Dogra rulers and so on. So my point is that they've had a long history of angst between the communities.
True.
Okay, there's conflict, there's spells of power, sometimes one is up, sometimes the other is up.
True.
So it's a long history.
Sure.
You don't arrive at 1990 out of nowhere.
Sure.
Even though things are reasonably okay, you play cricket outside, you have friends, you have buddies, and I know life in Kashmir was idyllic for both the communities. If you put this question aside,
sure.
If you just put this thing out of your head, who do you support in a cricket match, India or Pakistan? Your friendships were deep, you shared all kinds of cultural traditions, you shared a lovely, beautiful, idyllic life in the small towns and villages.
Absolutely.
So all that was there, but this big elephant in the room was always there.
Sure.
And like I said, it has a long history.
Sure.
So that resentment, which is brewing and building up, but you keep it aside, suddenly burst forth in 1990. Do you ever feel that this could have been something that, could have brought the communities together? Like I said, some of the Kashmiri Pandits also talk about being supportive of Azadi, but they said our biggest problem was the Islamization of the issue. But we were quite happy to be independent. We would have supported the majority community on that. Do you believe that? But because you clearly say that I believe in the nation.
I can't really speak on behalf of my community, but my family wanted to be a part of India.
Okay.
And all my friends and relatives I know wanted to be a part of India. So, I really can't answer that question. But in 1931, when the protests against the Maharaja, the Dogra Maharaja started, there were many prominent Kashmiri Pandits who were with Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, who was not the chief minister then, in this Naya Kashmir movement, which was against the Dogra Maharaja. So, there have been Kashmiri Pandits who have supported Azadi, who have wanted an independent Kashmir. They might have been...
or the idea of Kashmir as a special entity?
Yeah. But you see, in 1990, I don't know which way we would have opted as a community, but we were never given a chance. If you read the book, I quote one of our prominent leaders, Mr. H.N. Jattu. When the killings really started, he wrote an open letter to the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, which was at the forefront of the so-called Kashmir movement, and also killing and brutalization of Kashmiri Pandits at that point of time, saying that, what do you want the Kashmiri Pandits to do? Why are we being killed? And in response to that, they killed one of his close associates in downtown Srinagar, very brutally. He was murdered, and piss was sprayed over him. He was killed in that brutal fashion. I think that was their answer H.N. Jatu's question. And after that, there was no doubt left in our mind.
Yeah.
And the kind of language and the idiom of the whole movement was Pakistan-centric, anti-Kashmiri Pandit-centric. So after that, we're not left with any iota of doubt that they want us to be out of Kashmir.
So then, what do you feel when leaders like Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani or even Yasin Malik, who claims to be on a secular, peaceful path now, when they make appeals for Kashmiri Pandit brothers to return home, what's your feeling on that?
I think now they realize the mistake of what they did in 1999.
Why would Gilani realize this when you say mistake?
Yeah.
He's clearly for an Islamic Kashmir, Islamist Kashmir. Yeah. He's pro-Pakistan. He wants Kashmir to join Pakistan. Why do you say that he calls it a mistake?
They could have taken care of us later, as and when it would have become an Islamic state. But at that point of time, whenever this whole narrative of Azadi or Intifada, as they like to call it sometimes, is said, our story is like an eyesore. It's like a thorn in this narrative. So no matter how they wish it away, it can't be wished away because what happened in 1990. But having said that, these are all also symbolic gestures. Going to the Kheer Bhavani shrine in Kashmir, when many Kashmiri Pandits are visiting in June and hugging and embracing Kashmiri Pandits and making a statement that we want you back, Kashmir is incomplete without you. To which I would like to say, if Kashmir is incomplete without them, what has happened to 1,446 employees, Kashmiri Pandit employees, who have returned to Kashmir recently under the 2008 Prime Minister's package? Some of those stories are mentioned in this book. There's this young Kashmiri Pandit girl who was a teacher in a village in South Kashmir, and she was returning from the school and she was accosted. The problem is not really the security. The problem is the attitude still of the majority community, their colleagues with whom they have to work in schools and other offices. So this young girl was accosted by 4 men in a Maruti car, and he said, I've not been able to sleep ever since you came here, and I want to marry you. So obviously she left her job the next morning and flew back to Jammu. And there are multiple stories like this. So if they really wanted us back, these 1,400 odd men and women would not have faced the kind of discrimination they are facing in Kashmir Valley as we speak.
So it's not been a happy experiment?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. They say that after 1990, when the biggest exodus happened, about 3.5 lakh Kashmiri Pandits, they said, Pandits, those who chose to stay back, they were always welcome, we never harmed them. But they have been harmed many times, even after 1990.
Yes, you mentioned the
There's been a massacre in 98,
yes,
2003,
you mentioned that.
97.
Yes.
So many massacres have happened. So the Kashmiri Pandits are not really safe there as far as the current situation is concerned.
Tell me, the Kashmiri Pandit community, when it left Kashmir, at least when I was reporting there from, say, 90 to 94, this myth continued doing the rounds, that they had somehow been taken away by the Indian government, and this was on the directive of the then Governor Jagmohan. And it was very strongly believed, it was a trick, it was manipulation to give the Kashmiri freedom movement a bad name. The government provided trucks, they provided routes, they gave help, they set up camps, they sort of welcomed them in Jammu, etc. So this was all a pre-planned operation, and this is something that I think only now the story has begun to unravel a little bit in Kashmir.
I would say even I would say even now, and I think that's one of the primary reasons why I wrote this book. I think this is a part of the larger untruth that has been spoken. All these things that the Indian state wanted the Kashmiri Pandits to be out, but you see, Kashmiri Pandits, the Indian state were not in mosques when these slogans were being chanted against us.
Can you describe that night? Just describe. I think you mentioned it in your book. It's the night of January 19th, 1990.
Yeah.
And you talk about the slogans and you discuss the whole thing. But I'd just like you to focus on the commonality of it, because when you came out and you met other Kashmiri Pandits fleeing to Jammu, which you describe in the book, you realize that it wasn't just your experience, it was an experience across the whole state.
Absolutely.
So what was that night? I mean, yes. What are your memories of that?
It was a pre-orchestrated campaign which happened in the whole of Kashmir Valley on the night of 19 January 1990. January is one of the harshest winter months in Kashmir, and we're facing a very severe bout of winter. There was curfew at many places, but the administration was completely collapsed. There was no sign of army, there was no sign of the border security force, there was no sign of any paramilitary force or any civil administration. What changed for us is on the night of 19 January when these slogans, when these mobs, thousands of people in every locality. At that point of time, we didn't know that this was happening in entire Kashmir. When they started shouting these slogans, and these Mujahideen resistance songs were played in mosques, that frightened us a lot, because like I said, in my locality, about 15 to 20 Pandit households surrounded by Muslim neighborhoods from all sides, 3 to 4 mosques blaring this music and these slogans from all sides. So it was like that partition scene which I had witnessed a few years earlier in Tamas, if you know what I mean. Yes. And there was no sign of army. We had a border security force battalion right behind our house, but they were so scared themselves they did not venture out of their barracks. We could only see a searchlight flashing from left to right and right to left, and the whole night we were awake because we thought that they're going to come and rape our women folk. After a few weeks and months, when we left and we met so many other families in exile in Jammu, is when we realized that this thing was orchestrated on that night in whole Kashmir Valley, and things were much worse than in villages in North and South Kashmir than what we had experienced in the city.
Okay.
This thing about Jagmohan, which I wanted to make clear, if you look at official documents, there have been a couple of books and reports, etc., which say that Jagmohan was in command on the day of 19th January 1990. He was not in command. If you look at official documents, you can access them. Jagmohan flew in a BSF aircraft from Delhi to Jammu at about 12:30 in that afternoon. On the night of 19th January 1990, he was not even in Kashmir Valley. He was in Raj Bhavan in Jammu, where he was flooded by calls from 10 p.m. onwards by frightened Kashmiri Pandits who knew that he was coming, because his earlier stint in Kashmir in '86 had been very popular. He was a very popular administrator, and the Kashmiris looked up to him as an administrator, as an able administrator. So he received frantic calls all night, as he records in his memoirs also. So it is only a day afterwards that he came to Srinagar. But the civil administration, like I said, it was completely collapsed. There were many sections of police who were sympathetic to Kashmiri militants, and there was no way that the Indian state or Mr. Jagmohan could have orchestrated the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits as it happened.
Okay. Do you feel that when you're talking about this particular night of January 19th, you've also mentioned things said earlier that there were groups of Kashmiri Muslims standing outside a house talking about, okay, I'm going to take this house, I'm going to take that house.
That's later.
Yeah, but okay.
After 19th January.
After 19th January. So I'm going to come back to that question of the biggest betrayal was from the majority community. You regard that as something you didn't expect, or did you expect it? Did the community expect such a thing? Because betrayal comes when it's unexpected. Yet we are talking about a long list of issues and simmering sort of rage, resentment, discontent, angst between the communities. So it's not that unexpected.
Yeah, like I say, what happened in 1989-90 was really unfortunate. It was a brutal ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandits. But then I expected that there would be, at some point of time, years later, there would be some acknowledgement of what was done to Kashmiri Pandits.
And you haven't got that yet?
Oh, we haven't got that.
You haven't. So
No.
you're not satisfied with what with some of the statements that appear.
No statements have come. No statements have come.
No, from ordinary Kashmiris. I mean, you have friends there. You have.
No. I mean, personally, they come to our house and they say, terrible things happened. That's what also the the middlemen, the property dealers who would come to buy our house for peanuts in early 90s in Jammu, bringing us from Kashmir Valley souvenirs, small tokens of gifts. Saffron and collard greens and lotus stems. They also said the same thing privately to us. Okay. Things have happened terrible. We're in distress again. Pakistan is ruining us, etc., etc. But that's not the discourse once they return back to Kashmir Valley. Okay, that's for our private ears.
Right, but that's somebody who's trying to make profit out of you.
Yes.
But your personal friends, your Muslim friends, you grew up there, you went to school there, you have good friends who grew up with you, and you mentioned some of them in the book.
True.
Who feel your sorrow, who feel your tragedy. So does that at some point soothe the anger?
Personally, with my friends, we have always, and I say this in the book also, we have always avoided talking about 1989.
So you avoid it?
We always avoid it.
There's no discussion on it?
There's no discussion on it.
You don't come to any
no conclusion,
give and take, or I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that?
Nothing. We're never
Do you believe you have something to apologize for?
For us?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. We're not, I mean, when I was writing this book, someone said that, it's a very angry book. And a couple of books which my friends from the other side have, the other side roughly, the Kashmiri Muslims have written, they are not as angry as you are against Kashmiri Muslims. I said their anger is against the Indian state. My anger is not against the Indian state. I mean, now it is, but when we talk about the events of 1989-90, my anger is against my neighbors, my friends, who did nothing to save us, number one, and in many cases took active part in that brutality.
So what is the state of your relationships now with them? And I'm asking you this because you're a reporter. You keep going back to the state. You report there as a journalist. You've been there often enough. What is your current relationship with these old friends?
Oh, I have a very good relationship with so many of my friends, mostly journalists. And they come to my hotel because there are places where they can't drink openly. They come to my hotel room and we drink till wee hours of the morning and we discuss.
But this is not discussed?
This 1989-90 is not discussed. And I go there very often for reporting and I go everywhere. There are many people who know I'm a Kashmiri. Normal people, when I'm out on the reporting, I don't like to tell them the fact that I'm a Kashmiri Pandit.
But your name gives you away.
No, I say Rahul, so then, and over the years my pronunciation has improved a bit. So there's no bha, I can pronounce Bharat now, so that not that they would understand, but yes. So we don't talk about these things. Recently, on Twitter, I've been getting a lot of threats about, some of the excerpts which have been published, and they say that it's all untruth. I got some Twitter messages from fake accounts saying that you come to Kashmir and we'll teach you a lesson. And I told them that whenever I go to Kashmir, I stay in Hotel Broadway, preferably in room number 310. And every night from 8 to 10, I drink in this bar called Undre. So they are most welcome to come and meet me there.
Okay. But when you go back to Kashmir, when you went back the first time to report, what did you feel about the situation? I mean, here you are as a reporter, you're supposed to be neutral, but you're actually a participant in the conflict.
Right.
So, how does that impact your work as a journalist?
I think I was in double minds when I started going to Kashmir from 98 onwards. I was not sure whether I should go to Kashmir, but then I went. And I was extremely saddened at some of the stories my friends shared with me.
But when a Kashmiri Pandit looks back at the journey that a Muslim set forth in 1990, and he's looking in 2012, and he's seeing where that journey has gone, does that give you some sense of vindication, perhaps?
I think it's extremely saddening what we witness. Any sensible Kashmiri, whether he's a Kashmiri Pandit or a Muslim, will feel saddened at the prospects of what has happened in Kashmir Valley. I mean, you go to Kashmir Valley, you're traveling in villages and towns and small cities. There's not a single house which is not affected by militancy directly. There are disappearances, some of them forced. Some have turned militants and they have died. Some of them have died in inter-militant group rivalry, JKL, Fizl Mujahideen, Lashkar, etc., etc. And I think many stories are still to come from the Kashmiri Muslim point of view,
right.
Where so many innocent people have died at the hands of militants. 2 girls in Sopor being killed by the terrorist of Lashkar-e-Toiba.
But still that narrative doesn't come out.
But nobody talks about them because everything is silenced in the name of that larger Azadi. But unfortunately, what has happened in the last many years that this whole conflict has become a cottage industry. Everyone benefits from it. The Indian state benefits from it. Pakistan benefits from it. Kashmiri separatists benefit from it. If you look at the socio-economic profile of young boys who have died in cases of police firing from 2008 onwards, when the Amarnath agitation broke out, and then in 2010 again, more than 100 boys have died. All of them are from the poor strata of the society, sons of matador conductors, daily wage laborers, etc. So it's not the elite of Kashmir who becomes a target, pays for it.
Okay, just one more question. Both young generations of Kashmiris who have grown up in the conflict, you had to step out of the valley at least. Others stayed in, but then moved on to schools outside or went to colleges. There are lots of Kashmiri Muslims from these elite families that you talk about. And they're writing their stories now. You have plenty of Kashmiri authors, especially Kashmiri Muslim authors,
sure.
Writing about growing up there, what it was like, the crackdowns, the sort of the angst, the anger, the rage, everything. What one notices as a reader is that both stories seem linear. Your story is about the Kashmiri Pandits, and the Kashmiri Muslim story is about the Kashmiri Muslims. There is not much understanding or interest in the other side of the story. Even today, both sides of the divide don't look at the other. Do you think that's true?
I think, one doesn't need to endorse.
I mean, for instance, in your book, just let me give you an example from your book. You talk about January 19th, 1990, but on those same 2 days, there were 50 people killed and firing in Srinagar. Now that is a huge, big narrative on the other side.
True.
So if I talk to a Muslim author, January 19th is going to be about that.
Absolutely.
And if I talk to you, it's going to be about, this terrible night that you spent hearing the mosques hurl abuse at
I think personally,
so none of them talk about each other.
Fair enough. No, I think personally it's not been a problem with me. As a journalist, I have chronicled such stories more than enough from Kashmir Valley, from Kashmir Valley, of forced disappearances, human rights violations. This poor carpenter being shot and then shown as a foreign militant.
Right.
But this book, is my tribute to the resilience of my community, what we have faced, and I wanted to stick to that narrative as far as this book is concerned. But apart from this book, in my journalistic work, I think I have tackled the other side of the story much more than what I have done in this book.
All right. Okay, it was great having you on the show. I'd just like to wind up by asking you, who's your favorite journalist, your favorite newspaper, and your favorite channel?
I think as a journalist, I think it happens automatically. The first newspaper I pick up in the morning is Indian Express, followed by The Hindu. I think, I've not thought about it much, but I think it's just a habit. What are the other two things?
And why is that?
I think, when I was growing up as a journalist, when I started journalism, there was this, I heard someone from Indian Express, one of my seniors, say that one of the senior editors, I would not like to name him, and I think that's a valid argument. He said that whenever readers see the first page of Indian Express, the headline should yell at him, "Fuck you." So I think I like that attitude. So that punch used to be there. I think it has diluted a bit in the recent years, but now it's a habit. So the first newspaper I pick up in the morning, I get every newspaper. I pick up the Indian Express, followed by Hindu.
And favorite journalist?
And I read the Delhi Times.
That's important.
Yeah, I don't read Times of India.
Yeah, Delhi Times is important.
Yeah, I'm oblivious to television. I don't watch much of television.
Okay. So it's no point asking what your favorite news channel is.
No, not really.
Or least favorite.
But I like to watch Times Now once in a while.
And why is that?
Because I like some of the programming he does. Arnab, he has, at least as far as Kashmir is concerned, he asks questions which no Baba Log from other channel would like to ask.
Okay, Rahul Pandita, has been great meeting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.